That way everyone has a copy of it, can refer back to it, etc.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to let Tyson kind of run it, and I'm just going to kind of help with screen, and I'll try to keep an eye on the chat box also. But everybody has audio, so I guess the chat box probably feature won't be utilized as much.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay, so I mean, basically, you know, what we need to do today is we need to, first of all, Karen did a kind of, well, I went through and Kristen and I went and we actually broke it down into where we kind of went through the sequence of how the things should be taught. Mm-hmm. And our logic behind it was the fact that if the book is teaching it in that order, there's some things that they would have to know. I got a previous section to do some of the subsequent sections. So we went ahead and just went in order, and then Karen had created this module approach, and it kind of did the same thing Kristen and I were talking about, putting it in that same order, but she went ahead and broke it into modules.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes. Hey, Jason.
Okay, because it's kind of going in and out. I just want y'all to know that is it going that way for you, Jason?
Yes.
Okay,
so
good.
I was just going to say maybe slow down just a little bit, Tyson, so that when it does cut out, we don't miss as much.
Okay, good. Good.
Sorry.
Jason, did you get a copy of the documents that Tyson's talking about in your email?
I don't know. There's something here on the screen, but I can open up my email, I guess, if I can.
Just want you to know you do have copies of everything that we're doing here. You have copies of them.
Okay. Great.
Jennifer, did he get a copy of the module thing that I sent? I think I just sent that to Tyson just so he could look at it. Could you make sure he gets a copy of that?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it's here. Yeah, here we go. So here's kind of the breakdown that we were kind of looking at.
Yes, okay, there it is. Okay, yeah. Not that we have to use that. I just want to make sure.
Again, I mean, what we want to do is come up with like a basic algebra course, and instructors can add to it as much as they want to.
Yes.
As long as they, you know, they'll be able to add anything they want. And we were looking at, you know, once we set that basic course up, then making sure that when we pull our LEAP data and stuff, that those come out of this material, that are the basics that we should all be covering. And these courses, you know, we needed to comply with ACGM. The module thing that's on the book, I mean, I like most of the module thing, but we may want to talk about a couple of things in there.
Okay.
I mean, because I let Jan look at it this morning too, because she was
good. Yes.
And so what she suggested, if we scroll on down the module thing, that the way that we had originally put it, or the way that you had put it, well, first of all, if we look at section,
there we go, I got it.
Sorry.
Okay.
If we look at section 5.2 at the bottom, technically 5.2 we have to do. Technically 5.7 we don't have to do. That's optional. So we could actually take section 5.7 off.
Okay.
We only have to do, now I'm probably still going to do it in my classes, but because I want to show them how to add, subtract, and multiply matrices. But as far as this list goes, we probably want to X that out and not.
Okay.
And then what was suggested from Jan was like we take 4.1 and put back into module 4 with all the other chapter 4 stuff.
Okay.
So I would second that.
Right.
And Jason says he seconds that. So move 4.1 with module 4. All the chapter 4 stuff. Okay.
Right. And then we don't have to do, again, 5.7, but if we're going to do the matrices stuff, Jan suggested putting it either in chapter 3, or I said we could even put it back in module 1 where we're solving equations. I don't care where we do it, but we're going to need to put again, take 5.7 off since that was optional.
Yeah, just put it optional, Jennifer, or take it off completely and put it underneath 5.2 and just say optional, or just take it off completely. That's fine with me.
Well yeah, I mean, but actually, like section 1.1 up at the top is also optional.
Right, it is.
We said that was really background information.
I was just, and Tyson, do you think that, or Zach, Jason as well, do you think the 1.1, should we just include, you know, maybe cover that?
I'm still going to teach 1.1, but because I mean I get those older students every year that if I don't let you start with how to solve an equation,
yes,
I'm losing them from day one. So I'm still going to do that in my class, whether we put it in this course or not.
Me and Carol thing. I talked to Carol this morning, and we felt the same way when we taught college algebra. We always had to go back and pick up that 1.1 and just for
reference.
talking about
Or are
students.
we just saying we want to keep that in there?
I would
think
keep
it's-
it.
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, well, I'm just, for our organization here, I think that we should come up with the things that we're going to say have to be taught according to the ACGM. And then there isn't anything wrong with us coming up with recommended, optional.
Right.
And we could even include them at the top or the bottom or where they go with the tag optional.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, 1.1 is optional and the 5.7 was optional.
yeah,
Okay.
so
right.
we should just try to produce the minimum thing here for
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Recommended on that and leave it exactly.
/ optional. That sounds great.
Yes, I like that.
Well, okay, and then what unit are we going to put that 5.2 in? Because we have to teach that. So we have to figure out where we're going to put it, whether we put it in at the end of module 1 or we put it at the end of module 3.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you say again on the 5.2? I know we have to teach that. You cut out, and so I didn't hear anything.
On the 5.2, we either need to put it at the end of module 1 or the end of module 3, wherever we think it would go best, because we're not going to have time to do more than probably 4 tests.
Hey, I think we're probably going to take the recommended off on the 5.7, Jennifer, and maybe just either take it out completely.
How do y'all want to do that? Just tell me. You just want me to.
Is it optional, Tyson and Jason?
What do you think, Jason?
I'm still going to do it in mine, but it's not required. So I would just leave it optional.
Okay.
What'd you say, Jason?
I agree with optional.
Optional.
Okay. All right. That's good.
And do we want to move 5.7 and 5.2 to another section, or do we want to leave?
Yeah, I mean, they both need to go to the same place where.
Oh, yeah, they do. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking in terms of the context of what we're doing, where it's best.
It doesn't really fit in anywhere. I mean.
Well, that's the problem I'm running into is
right.
if you're gonna teach 1.1, it makes sense to put it with Unit 1.
Well, and that's what I thought is. To me, I liked it better with Unit 1. I think Jen suggested Unit 3, but I mean, we're not going to be able to make everybody happy as long as we're all teaching it.
Yeah.
I mean, we can rearrange the order as we want.
Right. I do like that. I agree with Jason and you on that as well, that we're putting it with the 1. I like that. Y'all tell me, do you think 4 tests and a final are too many? Should there be 3 modules? What do you think?
Well, okay. Time-wise, I would bet you money that you would get test, module 2 in a test, unit 3 in a test, but unit 4, you're at the final by the time you complete.
Well, see, and that got into the other thing. Dan had suggested maybe not putting chapter 5 with chapter 1, and say like you would do the 4 tests, and then you would teach the matrixy step, and then that would be included on the final.
That's what
you wouldn't have a separate test on it, but my worry is that if we do that, people will skip it and not teach it.
Yeah.
I think that you will not get 4 in-class tests.
That's what I was thinking, Jason, that was going to be pushing it.
This is pretty close to the breakdown that I teach anyway.
Okay.
And we are working hard to get through the chapter 4 stuff to get before the final.
Right. Okay. Well, and so if we, but I mean, realistically, instead of a unit 4 test, I mean, that unit 4 material could just be covered on the final. I mean, it doesn't have to be a separate test.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I do. About half of my final is that material.
Yes.
Well, right. And what we're talking about possibly doing is coming up with a LEAP sheet for college algebra that we would all include, so we would all have standardized LEAPs. And it would be like a back page that we would put on all of our tests. I mean, and that way, over whatever minimums we set.
So are we in agreement that we want to delete the Unit 4 test and then make a note that Unit 4 material will be covered on the final?
I think so. I'll vote for that.
Okay.
Well, and they can always add an extra test if they want to.
Okay.
Unit 4 material may be given separately if time allows. If not, include it on final.
Okay, unit 4 material may be tested separately.
Maybe
If time allows.
If time allows, otherwise will be included on final.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's clear.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Are we okay then on our basic sections?
Yeah, that looks fine to me.
Okay.
I don't see anything that I would change, but I'm only looking at 1 and 2 right now.
Okay. So if we're looking at it, I mean, the thing I wanted to be able to present on Friday was that we do have a suggested order of topics, which we now do have. And of course, and if we're all okay with that, then we also need to start thinking about the support topics that we're going to need. Again, that 1.1 was support, you know, and again, I'm still going to teach it, but some people would consider that support because we don't have to technically teach that one. But we need to look at those other topics and see what we can identify as like support for 1.1, support for 1.3, support for.
You want to grab that binder up there? Let's see what the.
I know we had that sheet of stuff, and I can go try to pull mine out.
Right.
So I'm looking at this, and then also, Cassie's right. We had that sheet, that breakdown sheet.
We had the breakdown sheet somewhere that had. I think
Jennifer.
in the office. Let me still can see.
Yes.
You were talking about this?
It'll have it in the,
That's
yes.
what I have also.
Yes. And I have, yeah.
Then there's also a little sheet.
Yes. I think she copied it straight out of that. You can look in it. I have the sheet. Yeah.
But you're right, it is in that book.
Yes.
Yeah, it's somewhere in there, but I don't know. Okay.
So I believe anything that support is kind of grayed,
Right.
a little shaded.
Yes, it is. Uh-huh.
And so, like, if we're going to do 1.1, you know, we need to identify, like, on that little side thing over there where it says right under module 1, you know, maybe, or doing a different color would be the support things.
Can we do like 1.1R? Because I think
Yeah.
the R is
Right.
communication.
Right.
And then,
We
okay,
can.
you want to do that?
Yeah, we can certainly do it that way.
Okay.
If we do 1.1R, you know, we could just, obviously, you know, before you teach the sections, you're going to look and see what you need to teach in the support class. You know, we know that like I said, we know the 1.1 review. Do we want to completely decide, you know, we actually just lined out particular topics.
Well, like, I mean, when I teach 1.1, I mean, I make sure I go back and cover clearing fractions.
Yes. Yes.
How to solve a basic equation, clearing fractions, how to you know, distributive property for parentheses.
I even had a question, Tyson and Jason and Jennifer. If you look under 1.3 review, do you see where it says the product rule for exponents, 0 as an exponent? Do you think that would need to be a support for chapter 1? When we're talking about solving equations, they're going to need to know, as far as, you know, the product. Do you think that should be a support?
Yeah, anything that's down there is support. I mean, we just need to make sure we stress there's so many things listed as support. I mean, we want to just pick the top maybe 2 or 3 things.
Right. I've got
that we would teach in the extended portion.
Right.
I would just think from teaching the developmental, and I don't know, it may be like, I don't go that low, but I really think you need to review probably sign rules.
Yes, the product of 2 real numbers.
I think you just need to, maybe start there because you'll be surprised how many of them don't.
Oh, man. Yes. What I had, I put the little bullets, use exponents, the rule of order of operations, and add, subtract, multiply, you know, the product rules of real numbers. Like Jennifer was talking about, you know, that would be a support, because as far as simplifying expressions, they're going to do that in 1.1 when they are doing equations.
Okay, so say those again. I'm going to highlight them on my sheet, Karen.
What I kind of had lined out was the use exponent bullet,
Okay.
the order of operation bullet, using the properties, the add, subtract, multiply, you know, with the with the signs on real numbers.
Okay. So find the product of two real numbers. And division, that's going to be division of fractions, basically. Use a reciprocal number. So it's
I wasn't really whatever about the division or the add and subtract decimals, because whenever you're, like Jason was talking about, when we talked earlier, when we talk in 1.1, then we refer to that. Like if I'm going to use the, you know, the definition of division, or if I'm going to add and subtract decimals in an equation, we kind of refer back to that. I don't know that I would think necessary to have a whole class on that particular topic. Do y'all still understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what you're saying is use the exponents, order of operations, add numbers with different signs?
Yes, and the product of two real numbers.
So not subtracting real numbers. You don't want that one in there.
Yeah, yes, both of those. Add, subtract real numbers.
All right. Those are the ones that I have. I don't know if you can see that. It's probably too small. Those are the ones I have for 1.1R.
Okay, I've got use exponents, the order of operations, add numbers, two numbers.
Okay.
Well, my only problem with that is we didn't mention fractions anywhere, and you're going to have to go back and review fractions.
I'm thinking, Tyson, when they talk about the add and subtract real numbers in developmental, they always have fractions in with that.
Yeah, but
so it covers it.
But if we list it out on our sheet, well, we might say, you know, find the sum and product of real numbers, and then parentheses including fractions.
Yes, that'd be good.
We need to specifically mention fractions.
Yes, we do, because they do need to, fractions do need to be addressed. But yeah, whenever we do those in the developmental, I always include, like I said, the fractions are there.
Okay. Okay. So if we're okay on 1.3 or 1.1, let's look at 1.3. Well, what do we think we need for section 1.3? Which is the complex numbers. Obviously, we need to know how to find square roots.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so that.
Oh, usually when I teach that section, I go over the properties of square roots, particularly the product and the quotient rule for
yes.
Okay, so are you looking at the sheet, Karen, that had all the grayed out stuff?
Are you talking about this sheet here with the grayed out stuff?
Yeah.
Like under 1.3?
So which one of those do we want to list? I mean, obviously finding square roots, but I mean, you want product rule of exponents? What do we want to do? Or do we just want to leave finding square roots? Now, I mean, because typically in that, because we're teaching them in that section the powers of I and all of that.
Right.
So basically, they need to know how to simplify basic square roots. I would think would be probably maybe all they need for that for supplements. I mean,
for 1.3, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to section 1.4. I mean, they don't list anything under the quadratic section, but that doesn't mean we can't list something. Do we think we need anything for supplementals on 1.4?
You know,
well, no, I mean, what I find helpful in 1.4 is I do a little, because if you're going to complete the square with ugly numbers, it's very helpful if you can quickly take half of any number and quickly square any number, any fraction. So I do a little review on those two things, and then that's really all I need for that. I don't think about.
Okay, and that's the other thing we haven't talked about, guys, is like I don't do completing the square when I teach that section. I mean, when I teach 1.4, I do like zero factor property, and I do quadratic formula, and that's typically all I do in that one. So we also need to talk about how in depth we need to be teaching some of these sections. Because
when me and Carol do the 1.3, we do the least on the difference of two squares. We do touch on it. We do the quadratic formula and the zero factor property, of course. But we do cover, but just whenever we're test, we really only usually put one on there. And so it is not something we touch on as greatly as we do the quadratic formula or the, I'm losing my train of thought.
Zero factor.
Yes. And so, but yes, we do both do teach it. We don't teach it as in depth as we do the other.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's the other thing that kind of gets us with some of the sections is some people are teaching everything in a section, and some people are only teaching specific parts. And if we're trying to make a more standardized course, we need to just, I mean, and again, what we're suggesting are the minimums. People can always go above. So like if we don't put completing the square there, and someone still wants to do it and feels obligated to do it, they can. But I mean, if we put it down as a minimum, that means we all have to do it. And so, do we want to put completing the square? And if so, that's fine. I don't care. I just, we need to be deciding. Of course, once we come up with this, then we're going to actually build a course that will have an assignment in it.
Right.
But I mean, if we can decide now we want to include completing the square, we want to include those things, then it'll make building the course simpler later.
I'll go with the majority. Like I said, we always include it, but it is up whatever, you know.
I know Kristen doesn't include it, and
Kristen as well.
I seem to be in the minority here. I like to teach completing the square, but it really is just an application of the square root property.
Well,
and so
you're right.
So
we both do teach it.
Okay. Well, so do y'all want to put it on there as required? Again, anything that's put on there as required, we can't back off of. So, and I'm okay with putting it on as required, but I mean,
I think, you know, like I said,
put it on.
Well, we could, you know, this once we get this, we're going to move forward with this, but we still have time to edit things and change.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be able to change whenever. But I know that's one of the questions that's going to be asked of us Friday, because Jan's already been asking me, well, what level are you going to be teaching these sections?
Right.
And so I know Friday they're going to hit us with that.
Right, but completing the square, I don't think is a remediation topic.
No, it's not.
Well, no, I'm not talking remediation at all. I'm just saying within what we're doing, we need to.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a whole different topic because, I mean, that's just what you're just talking about what we would cover in section 1.4. I think that's.
I mean, I'm not sure that we don't need to decide what we're going to teach in each section before we decide the appropriate remediation for each section.
I see what you're saying.
Right.
Because if we're deciding all these things based on teaching the whole section,
yes,
if we're not going to teach the whole section, then some people may not need some of those things.
Right. I see what you're saying.
And so if we know how in depth we're going to teach each section, then I mean, I'm not sure we're not doing a bunch of stuff for nothing right now.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Jennifer, could you put beside 1.4 under the module, put in parentheses, you know, a question mark, you know, difference of two squares, and said if we're not, you know, not difference of two square. I'm sorry, I just got out of intermediate algebra. Completing the square. Okay. Sorry, I just got finished teaching that.
See,
okay, I sent stuff that that I'm emailing back and forth with her. Chris, she didn't know if we meant as a remediation topic. She thought it should be optional. And so I just now sent her and said, no, we were talking about as part of the algebra course. So I'm waiting to hear back and see what she says. But like you said, Tyson, a lot, like I said, here we always covered, we did we completed the square. When me and Carol teach it, we complete the square. And I'm sure Jan, if we do it optional, it's not like they can't cover it if they want to. People can cover it if they want to.
I mean, again, we just want minimum topics. The things
right.
And people can always cover it more in depth if they want.
Yes.
I mean, but if we don't decide the basic minimums that we're going to cover in each section, then it's hard to decide what remediation they're going to need.
Yes.
So we're not wanting to do remediation topics right now.
Well, I don't know. It's okay.
Well, I mean, they're intertwined. Making the decisions about what we want to teach and remediate, they're kind of, so we have to have a little bit of that. I mean, I would just say, look, if we're talking about setting up the minimum
yes
requirements, then we should throw out completing the square unless we have some kind of consensus that we're all going to do it. I'll still probably choose to do it as an optional thing, but
okay, so take off completing the square.
Yeah. I mean, and then we can work from what we have for remediation topics.
Right.
So
okay.
Move forward.
Well, and it should also be, once we actually build our course and come up with minimum homework assignments, I mean, as long as the teachers are teaching what they need to get through those minimum assignments, then they ought to know they're okay. I mean,
right. Yeah, you can always add.
Right. I mean, they can add more, but I mean, if we don't put completing those square assignments, they should kind of clue into the fact that they may not need to teach that. But they can always add some questions if they want to, as long as they don't take away the minimum. Okay. So what do we want to do? So do we want to go ahead and decide what remediation topics we need for 1.4? Do we need any?
Well, now that we've made our decision, why not?
Yes.
So 1.3, the only thing y'all need to remediate on that is just finance square roots?
Yeah, finance square roots.
Okay. So 1.4. Alrighty. Okay, so if we're doing 1.4, then we're looking at quadratic equations. So obviously maybe a review of factoring, because there's 0 factors in there. Maybe are you highlight? I mean, that's not. Oh, it's not even in there. No. Okay, so we just want to review.
Right.
I mean, which ones of these things do y'all want to list? I mean, I'm not the only one talking, guys. Sorry.
Well, as you said, there's not as far as.
See, it doesn't list anything on 1.4.
Yeah, I think there's nothing listed. We definitely will have to review factoring.
We're going to have to review.
Right down to the greatest common factor.
Yes, exactly.
So is that more? So if you look under 1.5 on that sheet, it says 1.4R/1.45.
Yes. Yeah, that's what those bullets there.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to do all 3 of those?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say greatest common factor.
Yeah, all 3 of those for 1.4 and 1.5.
Do you highlight those?
And it's talking about using the full method. I would probably teach a C method, since that's what we typically did in our developmental, and that's what most of the students seem to be most comfortable with. I don't know if I would teach with full. I would teach probably with AC.
Well, I don't even know why they call it the FOIL method, because they had to call it the unfoil method.
I know.
It was out in the other direction.
Yes.
You're right. I agree.
I call it the guess and check method.
Yes. Trial and error.
Sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I am not a fan of the AC method. It does work. I mean, that's the only thing you can argue about it. But I would rather crawl across a parking lot filled with broken glass and no clothes on than I would do the AC method.
Yes.
But then again, I was educated when they made us learn our multiplication tables and stuff. Yeah. So, if you don't know anything, I guess maybe the AC method is best.
Well, I mean, when you factor out the greatest common factor, and then I would say review factoring of some sort.
Right.
And that way the instructor can, if they want to do AC, they can do AC. If they want to do trial and error, they can do trial and error. Whichever way they want to do it, they can do it.
Okay.
And we could also offer up both.
Right.
I have
A what, Jason?
I was just suggesting we could offer up the option methods.
Yes.
So my feedback is from teaching developmentals is AC method is very structured. You do the same thing every single time. And so just keeping in mind the level of students that are going to be in this particular course, the AC method, I mean, you know, look for a GCF. Do you have a GCF? Yes, no, step 2. Okay. I mean, it's literally lined out for them. So they tend to do better because it is so structured, and they may not know those multiplication tables. And they may still be struggling with sign rules and some other little things. So just keep that in mind. I'm not saying we have to put it in there, but they tend to do well with that just because it is so lined out for them.
Well, I won't talk them out of it if they got their heart set on it, you know.
Right. Myself, I've always used the trial and error.
They're probably going to come into your class and they're not going to have any clue what the AC method is. So
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second there.
what I was saying is the students that are going to be coming into this class, 95% of them are not going to have a clue what the AC method is unless you present it to them. So really, whichever way you present factoring to them, that's really the only way they're going to know factoring, period. So whatever the instructor throws out and says this is the method you need to use, they're going to think that's the way.
So we need to just say some sort of factoring method.
I think so.
I mean, method, and then maybe in parentheses HC, trial and error, whatever, etc.
The only thing about the trial and error, I will tell you that because that's the way they teach it. If you watch the videos in chapter 6 in my math lab, those students come back to me and they're like, I feel like I'm pulling numbers out of the air. And so they just don't, like I said, that.
Well, I teach AC method on all 3 of those sections in developmental when I teach it, because it's typically what they do best with. And that's probably what method I will choose, but I don't want to tie another instructor to having to use that method.
Right.
So
I'm just trying to keep in mind the type of students.
I know. Now for the lower students.
I'm going to be here to support you guys when this goes live in the fall.
Okay, so if we're okay with 1.4, let's look at 1.5. I mean, and obviously we've already done these remediations.
That goes, yes. It's the same 4.15.
Right.
Yeah. 1.5 is just the applications, right?
Right. So what we do with 1.4, the remediation does cover for 1.5.
Yeah, I don't think you need anything special in remediation for word problems.
Yes.
Do y'all need to cover factoring of difference of squares? Do y'all want to throw that in with?
Well, you know, that's what we've taught in intermediate algebra, and I think it's very useful. I, in fact, want to get the 3 identities, the A plus B quantity squared, the A minus B quantity squared, and the difference of squares out as soon as possible, because we have the opportunity and to expand things.
Okay, so put differences of squares up there.
Yes.
And then on 1.5 for support, I would say C 1.4. I mean, because that is
enough remediation for both sections.
Exactly.
Remediation for both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's look at 1.6.
How about 1.4 are topics, are remediation for this section?
Yes, that's fine.
Or for that matter, you could just leave 1.5 blank, kind of implies the same thing.
Yes.
I mean, we should, but
I'll just put a note there.
It's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So 1.6.
Other types of.
Let me see. Get my book.
And I think 1.6 is one of those sections that we all cover in different depths.
Yes.
Some people go way, way above it, because like some of those leaps we had from last semester that came out of that topic, I'm like, I never even taught anything near that in my classroom.
Okay.
And so
what is, when we talk about minimum level for 1.6, where do all three of you, in consensus say, okay, this is the minimum level we want to get to in 1.6. If the church wants to go higher than that, that's fine.
Okay, let me ask, are we going to cover equations in this, or equations and applications both?
Well, I would say we've already done applications in 1.5.
That's what I think as well.
We're doing a minimum course, and
right.
Like maybe we just focus on the solving equations in 1.6.
Yeah,
I would go with that.
Yeah, I don't do any more applications in 1.6.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, none of the applications in 1.6, well, except for work rate problems, it's very hard in 1.6 to give an application question where they can come up with their own equation that's of the style of the section.
Of what they need,
so,
right.
Yeah, so all the word problems tend to be of the model. We give you X, bother to teach any more applications in this section. You already have enough on your plate
right.
with the rational equations, radical equations, and the quadratic in things not X.
Okay. So what do we want for remediation for 1.6? I mean, well, we've already reviewed square root, basic square roots up above when we did. So we're and we've already reviewed solving equations and.
Probably that, finding the values of the variable for which the rational expression is undefined. Do you think we probably should address that?
I would say so.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is definite remediation.
Definite. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So we want to use that one. Okay. Anything else we want to use for 1.6?
Define and use the expressions of the form A to the M over N.
Let me see it. Where is that?
I think that's on actually.
Oh, yes, on the next page. Yes.
Because they don't know that the fractional exponents are equivalent to radicals.
No, they don't. You're right.
Okay. I will agree with that.
Kristen mentioned that she doesn't think that 5.7 and 5.2 is probably a good fit in Module 1.
Well, where does she suggest we put it?
Let me see just a minute what she said.
Because it doesn't fit with anything.
It doesn't. She was just, I could see doing it with Chapter 3 much more than in Module 1. She said.
Why Chapter 3?
She says, I really don't want to teach Chapter 5 in the first, with word problems in the first module. That would be too much for students on the first test with, including this, the Goss Jordan and the other, in her opinion. And I mentioned to her that Jan had said something about doing it with Chapter 3, but it would be optional whichever way. She said she could see doing it with Chapter 3 much more than Module 1.
I mean, we can move it to Chapter 3. I don't care where we put it. It's
Me either.
going to out no matter where we put it.
Yeah. Right.
It might not be a bad fit in Module 2 where you've done functions and okay, so here's what looking at Module 2, I might suggest a trade here.
Okay.
Trade 3.1 back to Module 3 and put 5.2 in Module 2.
That's, that'd probably be a good trade-off.
I mean, again, 5.2 still stands out, but that section, aside from the transformation of functions, is pretty straightforward.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, no?
Okay.
Looks good.
So we're done with Module 1 then?
Yes, and Jennifer, on that remediation with 1.6, where you got the 1.5, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
That's all right.
That's
I
okay.
was just,
Doing your remediation at 1.5, so I just like 4 or 5. That should be the next number. All right.
Okay, so 2.3.
okay. Okay, let me see.
So, I mean, I think in 2.3, of course, it says there's solving for a specific variable. I mean, I think of 2.3, that's the ones where we start doing domain and range and all that, right?
that's
Right.
right.
That was,
And so, I mean, I always have to review ordered pairs.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
I mean, this is the X coordinate, this is the Y coordinate. I do like a basic, this is an XY graph because they're going to be in graphing by the end of that to look at
Yes.
Art,
um,
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you, when you say you're reviewing ordered pairs, are you including with that how to get an ordered pair from something like f of 3 equals 5?
I do that, yes, within that. But I
That
mean,
makes a lot of sense.
Okay, what do y'all think about just letting the section 2.1 take the topics out of it, the college algebra 2.1 topics, be some remediation for 2.3?
rectangular
Nice.
coordinates and graphing. Yeah.
Because that has the topics that you were talking about as far as ordered pairs and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we could say section 2.1 would be remediation for that.
And people could use what they feel like that they need
Right. I mean, so I would say,
in the college algebra. Yes.
I still like the remediation for 2.3. I know they say solve a formula for a specific variable, but I was preferring to think of that as express a function. No, I'm sorry, function of a particular.
say that again, Jason.
At remediation as well.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hey, Jason, you cut out on our end. I'm sorry.
What they have is solve a formula for a specific variable, and I was just thinking of that as express as a function of a particular variable.
yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think we need to include that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 2.1 and then put that 2.3 thing in there.
2.3.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also as part of that, dependent versus independent variable.
Yes.
Right. I'm okay with that too.
Do y'all want me to put like basically a vocabulary of ordered pairs? So we have input, output, domain, range. Is that kind of what y'all wanting to cover all the things that they can be called? That means.
Well, I mean, okay, but domain and range actually fall under the section 2.3.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I mean, if they know how to work a basic graph and they know coordinates,
Yeah.
and all that, then we teach them that into 3. So
Right.
the remediation is just that they basically need to understand how to look at a graph,
Okay.
how to graph points.
How to graph points. Anything else?
Well, I mean, how to graph points, how to, well, and Jason said interpret like f of 3 and know what that means. But I mean, how did you say it, Jason?
I was just, they don't understand that when you see f of 3 equals 5, that means that 3 comma 5 is on the graph.
Exactly. They don't.
Function notation. How to
Yeah.
interpret.
Well, yeah. I mean,
How to translate between function notation and ordered pairs.
ordered pairs.
Okay, that sounds
Okay.
good.
Because, I mean, that is a big thing they have trouble with. Looks good to me.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go 2.6.
Okay.
2.6 was the graphs of the basic functions. I mean, for that one, I mean, normally when I'm teaching that section, I mean, I'm just basically showing them how to graph with an XY chart.
Yeah.
It is what I do at the very beginning. And then I graph all those six basic functions with an XY chart. And then I tell them, well, hey guys, you really shouldn't have to know that. You should know these six basic graphs.
Right.
I mean, that's how I build that section. And then of course in 2.7, then we'll use that for all those transformations. But
Yeah, I kind of think that the remediation we've already set up is also remediation for 2.6.
So do I.
Okay. Are we going to like teach them how to graph on an XY chart in any of that remediation?
Yes, Tyson, that's in that.
I mean, is that in 2.1?
Let's look at
Yes, let me look back at it, but I was just looking through it.
Because it's no, we want to mention that.
2.1 includes, you know, all the way back to the basic. Let me look at it. Hang on.
I mean, that's not a section I normally teach, so.
Rectangular coordinates and graphs. It teaches everything. You know, it goes all the way back to ordered pairs, the rectangular system, the coordinate planes. I mean, it talks, you know, all the, you know, stuff that it does have the distance formula, the midpoint formula, those kind of things. But then, the equations in two variables, it covers that. So all of the, like, just the x-axis, y-axis, the system, the coordinates, all of that, where they're finding ordered pairs and how they graph them, that's all in 2.1. You find intercepts as well, and finding other ordered pairs.
plot the order pairs.
Yes. So that, right, it covers all those basics. We could use that.
Okay.
What is that? That is, what's 2.6 graphs of basic functions?
Right. I mean, I
As
just,
Jason said,
is
what we
the
cover in,
title, yeah.
yeah, what we cover will remediate for this.
well, I mean, because that'll be my remediation before I do that. If my remediation is going to be, you know, XY charts and whatever. So.
Exactly. Mine too. Exactly. And that covers all that. Like I said, in 2.1. I mean, it's at the basic of what an ordered pair is even.
But there's a lot of stuff by saying that 2.1 is the recommendation. There's a lot of stuff in 2.1, like midpoint and some of that stuff that we don't need for this other.
Right. We need to.
And so
right.
we probably ought to be a little more specific than saying section 2.1.
Okay.
What we can say,
Bonnie, if you want to use that on page, I don't know what page I'm on. MCE 94 is what I'm on, Karen.
you could, okay, me too. You could say,
You could just rule out, tell them to get rid of the midpoint and the distance for
the distance, yeah. Because if you just said, using examples 1 and example 7, hang on, let me see. I would just say, using examples 1 and example 7, that covers it. The other is what the other examples 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are distance and midpoint formula. So,
So we don't want to do distance or midpoint.
no. So if you just said, let me see. Let me get where I'm at. Or we could just literally say,
2.1 excluding distance and midpoint.
right.
That would work.
Do that. That'll work. That'll do that.
So.
Yes, that'll work.
I mean, because we're already going to have enough to cover, and these
We will.
be very overwhelmed. And
Right.
if we're throwing in a bunch of extra stuff, and again,
Yeah.
we're creating the minimum. So
All we need is the remediate. Right. We just need them to know this. You're exactly right.
Okay. Okay. So in 2.6, are we going to say basically C 2.3?
Yes. The
Sounds
same
good.
thing that we did. Just make a note. The remediation is covered in section 2.1. Just like you did in that one.
so 2.7.
Hey, Jennifer,
Yes, ma'am.
did we, okay, yeah, you put the 2.3R. Okay.
Do you want to put 2.1 and 2.3 or just 2.3?
Yeah, put 2.1/2.3R. That'd be good so that they covered in that.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and again, in section 2.7, the way I teach that is,
Uh-huh.
is I graph it with XY charts first, and then I
Yes.
show, hey guys, we didn't have to do that. We could have just moved it up, down, left, or right.
Yes, that's the same way.
I mean, and so realistically, that same remediation that we've already said really is 2.7, in my opinion.
Okay, is 2.7 like translations, rotations, reflections?
No, it's not. All it is shifting graphs up, down, left, and right.
Okay.
Or that's the level that I teach it at. I don't know that other people do that, though.
Oh, I teach the whole thing, transformations, period, stretching, reflecting, and
Yes.
moving.
Stretching. I mean, I teach stretch.
Okay,
Okay.
what do we want the minimum to be of all of, because we want it to,
Well,
I mean, we want them to do vertical shifting, horizontal shifting, stretches.
So translations, moving,
Right.
and then shifting.
yes.
I mean, at that point, that kind of is everything.
Yeah, it is.
So the remediation for that needs to be.
They don't offer anything for 2, 5, 6, 7 as far as remediation. They just kind of build on each other.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That remediation we've already done is laying the foundation for 2.7.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
okay.
2.7 is its own kind of animal, and
Right.
there's no remediation.
No.
Or previous section service remediation. I mean, because it's really what it is all those previous sections built.
It is. You know, what you do in 2, 3, and 6, and 1 is going to cut, that is the remediation for 2.7.
Okay.
It's not really a,
6 is the remediation.
right. And you got to realize that the remediation class, you know, we will need to be able to really take in depth and time. Some of these students are going to be testing at beginning algebra status.
Right.
So it's okay if we don't have as much, if, you know, the remediation side is not so heavy, because you really are going to have to remediate for them to be able to get the college algebra. If you have somebody coming in at beginning algebra status, then so it's, I have no problem. Like I said, with 2.7, what we've already covered, you know, no remediation there. Just make sure we cover heavily before, you know,
And
that gives us more room is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, all these remediation things are what are suggestions. I mean, if someone doesn't want to teach them and they think they can get by without teaching all those things, then they can. I mean, all we're doing is putting forth, as long as they're doing the actual sections of work, that's all they're required to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, they're going to have to do some remediation, but they may look at their class and say, well, it lists 12 things. I only need to do 3 of those with mine. I mean, they're not going to have to do necessarily all of that. They will have to remediate, but to what level depends on their class.
Yeah, your students will drive the class. Y'all know well as I do that sometimes courses, the students know more, they're at a different level. So your students will kind of drive the remediation.
Right. Okay, so 2.8, we're going to look at that.
Okay.
And that's actually a section I haven't been teaching. So, I mean, y'all have to tell me if y'all been teaching it. So.
Oh, I've been teaching it, function operations. And I really want to teach composition. I don't care so much about function operations.
I like
forward that I just do them both now.
I'm trying to look and see.
You didn't teach it at all.
I haven't been teaching that section at all, but I will have
So
to teach
Karen,
it now.
you're saying just composition, or are you saying both?
Well, I did operations on functions. You've got to realize the last 3 I've taught stats. So it's, but when I did teach algebra, that I used operations on functions. I was trying to see, I'm looking back to see, did you mention Jason in that section?
Oh, I teach both of them, the operations and the composition.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm just now saying, yes. We did that as well, the operations. And I was just looking to see what you were talking about. Like I said, the last 3 springs I've taught stats, so I'm having to remind myself what's in each sections. But I'm okay on whatever y'all want to, like I said, I just mainly went with, Carol, what, she had, and I just kind of, whenever I started teaching it, just kind of went with hers.
I want to say in 0310,
Yes.
that last section, chapter 10, we cover all of those topics, adding and subtracting, multiplying. I think so. Y'all just need to let me know as far as remediation what you feel like y'all need to cover so that they can be successful with what y'all are introducing.
Okay. So do we want to put adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials as the remediation?
Well, I've been thinking
as well as
I want to or not, because I just, this isn't something you need to know in order to be successful here.
That's what I think.
It doesn't hurt, because adding and subtracting polynomials is like a very nice version of f plus g.
Yes, it is.
And so, okay, that can't hurt you. And if you were doing f times g and you had 2 polynomials, you'd have to know how to sort of work your distributive magic with something that was where it didn't exactly fit. You got a trinomial times a polynomial with like 4 thing, and then you say, well, now you got to get the first element of the trinomial has to hit all 4 elements of the polynomial, and then the second element has to repeat, and so on, which is not strictly speaking for. So I can see some value to it, but then I also can see that if we can find something else, our time would be better spent.
Yes.
Okay, so no remediation for this?
I would be comfortable with that.
I mean, I haven't taught this section,
That's
so
what I was going to say.
I don't know what to.
I don't know what you're doing, so I don't know what level they're going to come in at.
Okay, well, I just noticed that the third subtract rational expressions with different denominators.
Yes.
We can't get enough practice with fractions or rational expressions, so we might want that.
Okay.
Tyson, are you saying that you did not, you don't normally cover 2.8?
I have not. I will have to now. But
okay, so do we want to discuss, or are we going to go with both topics in this, or do we want, like, are we going to do the composition and whatever, the using operations? Are we going to do both? Go forward, let's make sure on that.
So we're just looking at the learning outcomes, Karen. We're just seeing
okay
what they say compositions.
Yeah, it does say we have to do compositions.
Okay.
On the thing, so we do need to do compositions.
So let's go ahead and do operations and compositions.
It does say operations. It says operations and compositions, but we need to be doing both pieces.
Just want to make sure that y'all are on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with whatever.
Okay.
On this.
Okay. Yeah, that's good with me.
As far as the 3 remediation topics they offer, I think we have to take the third one, because
really with doing that one, you're reviewing
lots of stuff, lots of good stuff.
Okay, so
you get what I'm saying on that one? Like if you do the third one, then you're automatically kind of reviewing that first one.
Right.
Your denominators to be the same. Okay.
So, yeah, sure.
So 2.8R, 2.8R. Add
and subtract rational expressions with different denominators. Okay, let's go to section 5.2.
Okay.
Making progress.
And they list nothing there, and they're going to need a lot of stuff because they've never solved systems.
No.
I mean, And if they don't know how to solve a basic system and you throw it in Gauss-Jordan right on top of it, I mean, because 5.2 is teaching them Gauss-Jordan for systems, but we're going to need to probably review how to solve a basic system.
I mean, are you saying the remediation should be 5.1?
Well, I mean, we need to solve a basic system.
Yeah.
And then you need to know how to do that before we start using all those equations with Gauss-Jordan.
Yes.
So when y'all solve systems, do y'all show them both ways?
Well, I mean,
substitution and elimination, or how do y'all use it? When you get for here, which one is better?
Well, in 5.2, all I normally do, because I actually do teach that one, but I mean, when I do it, I'm like, guys, you know, here's our equations. We're going to put them into a matrix, and then I'll review normally how to add and subtract equations. And so, and that's what we're using on Gauss-Jordan. And so that's what I do. But I mean, I think that they're going to, I mean, that they've never seen a matrix before.
Right.
And so, but like normally when I teach it, I teach 5.7 before I teach 5.2. If I'm teaching it, I mean, so I do that adding, subtracting, multiplying matrices.
Okay, yes.
And dimensions of matrices and all of that stuff in 5.7.
Can 5.7 be the remediation?
Maybe it could be the remediation then instead.
But they don't need all that.
That feels
I mean, they don't need that for 5.2. Well, what they need to know how to do is solve a basic system before we wind up throwing them into Gauss-Jordan solving systems. Just my opinion.
Right.
Right. Well, and along with that, solving the systems is what's very helpful for the elimination method is to know how to find the least
The least one?
Multiple.
Oh, okay.
the least common multiple, not the least common denominator, although they are sort of related.
Okay, so what do we want to say on 5.2 for remediation?
Is there anything in 5.7 that you're like, hey, they for sure need to know that for 5.2? No. So 5.7 is just going to remain completely optional.
5.7 is just optional if
Okay.
you want to do more than one thing with matrices. It's a nice, easy section for the students to do. So.
Yes.
Build some confidence.
Well, and to me, I mean, because like when I'm teaching them on 5.2, I'm teaching them, you know, adding, subtracting the matrices are easy. But then when they're multiplying the matrices, they're having to learn a process to multiply.
Yeah.
Like a 3x3.
Right.
You know, 2 3x3 matrices. You know, they're having to learn that process. So that kind of helps me when I'm going into 5.2, because there I'm teaching them a process as well with matrices. But it's a harder concept with Gauss-Jordan than obviously it is with just plain old multiplying. So, but I mean, I use that, but not everyone would need that, obviously. I mean, I do think that they need to understand how. Maybe we could just say on 5.2, basic understanding of solving systems of equations. I mean, could we say something like that?
I think that would be fair.
Would that be, and Jason, what else did you mention earlier?
The least common multiple.
Yeah, the least common multiple.
So, least common multiple. And then a basic understanding of solving systems of equations.
Right.
And the instructor can interpret that however they choose.
Yes.
Which I know is kind of, we want to get away from so much. Everybody being different, but
The only thing that concerns me, which is just coming from the developmental mindset, is if you have an instructor who is used to teaching higher level courses and steps down and teaches the developmental for the first time, the things that they think that some of them are going to assume students already know some of these things. So if you define, hey, to be successful in 5.2, you need to know this basic concept and whatever those are.
well, I mean, a basic understanding of solving systems. I mean, and by that I mean like adding equations, subtracting equations.
Mhm.
I mean, because that's what they're going to need in Gauss-Jordan.
Can I take a stab at rephrasing what you're saying, Tyson?
Yes, go Go for it.
I think what you're saying is how to manipulate the systems and obtain equivalent systems
Okay.
closer to your solution. That's what you're talking about, adding the systems, and you're trying to get an equivalent system. And an equivalent system is anything where the solution set is the same between the systems, and that's the whole premise of solving.
Okay, so how do we want to word it?
And there's the.
I mean,
Jason, how do you want me to word that?
Rules for solving systems. The rules basically define the operations that you can make and maintain an equivalent system.
After that, is that what it was? Okay. Rules for solving systems?
Yes.
Yes.
okay. Let's go to chapter 3.
We're doing good. Hey.
Okay. I mean, building a course will be better once we have all this stuff in place.
Yes, it will.
So, okay, so in section 3.1,
Well, I think the next two sections are going to be very nice for us
Yes.
because we already talked about common functions, and quadratic functions are just a special, well, they're transformations.
Yes, it includes, yes. So
okay.
I think we'll be okay in it. I mean, everything that we have done up to this point should prepare them.
Well, can we say the remediation for this was taught in section, whatever we did up in 2? I mean.
Yes.
4.3.1.
Yeah, because that's where we taught quadratics, right?
Right.
Tyson,
Yes.
Kristen asked, would you check your phone from her?
Well, it's not in here.
Okay.
I mean.
So on this one, 3.1 and 3.2, probably pretty much, Jason, you think we've, up to this point, we've covered where we're at?
I think what we want them to know in 3.1 is we're building a new thing there. I mean, we've seen quadratic equations, and therefore they've seen some functions, whether we called it that or not.
Right.
But what we're now going to do is, instead of fixing it being equal to something, we're going to say, well, y is now equal to a quadratic function, and therefore you can get a graph and the properties therein.
Right.
So really everything we want them to know, understand, and do in 3.1 comes from 3.1.
That's what I think as well.
So,
Yeah, so I don't see any remediation there unless someone has another idea.
No, I'm right with you on that.
I mean, I just wonder, and I'm not opposed to that, but I mean, the whole point of the remedial course is it's not supposed to be the same thing we're doing in our shortened course.
Right.
I mean, and so I think they're going to expect when they look at this that they're going to see something there, even if we think we've already taught it in the previous sections. I think they're going to expect that we're going to show something on
Want to refresh your memory on this is what we did, even if we've already remediated, just kind of like a refreshing.
But I mean, I think, if we go like one section and we say no remediation, I think we can get by with that. But if we say like a whole chapter with no remediation, I mean, I don't think we're going to be able to get by with.
No.
Well, I don't think
there is remediation for 3.2 and 3.3.
Right.
Yeah, I think that here that's suitably unique, but we'll have stuff to say in the following sections.
Right.
Okay, which ones do y'all want to put in for 3.2?
Okay, so the 3 that they've got recommended: square binomials, perfect square trinomials, and those 2, the square binomials, and we've already got that earlier, don't we?
I don't think we, I don't think that we did. I'm looking up, trying to see.
Well, yeah, I didn't.
You get factor of difference of squares in 1.4/1.5.
Yeah, that's factoring.
Did you also add I'm referring back to saying that I was pushing for a squared minus b squared, and then a plus b quantity squared, and a minus b.
Yes. I forgot that you said that.
Okay. Yeah. See, I like that stuff early, and because we got that early, we don't have to say a lot about it now, unless you want to. I mean, people could bring it up again if they want to. It's perfectly fine, because seeing it a second time will only benefit people.
Yes.
Divide a polynomial by a polynomial, I would support that. I think that they need to know long division.
Yes.
And then zeros of polynomial functions would be great too. What is a zero? Oh, except that's a typo because that's section 3.3.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
My bad. I thought that looked funny.
Sorry, guys.
So do y'all want all three of those shaded ones that are under 3.2R?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't hurt. Like I said, people can touch back on it if they.
This is actually 3.3. It just was shaded.
Yeah.
I see it. Okay.
What's Kristen? What'd she say?
Sorry, guys. I mean, Kristen's grandmother just had a massive stroke.
Oh.
So that's why I'm texting in the middle of talking to you guys.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably. That's terrible.
Well, I don't know that she's leaving yet. She's about to let me know what she's doing.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm kind of trying to do both, so.
Well, Tyson, did you notice that 3.3, 3.35 doesn't really include any remediation?
Right, and I mean.
But we could still, I mean, you're doing a lot of that earlier already.
Right, I mean, I'm just saying, if we're doing like graphs and stuff back in chapter 2.
Right.
I mean, for the remediation, we can say review topics taught in 2.6.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to stress ourselves by adding more stuff to it.
No.
If we just say something, review.
But I think you're right. We could say, those topics, whatever topics would cover what is in 3, 4, 5, 3, 3, 4, and 5.
Sorry, I was texting again. What?
I said the same thing. Like you said, as far as 3, 3, 4, and 5, we could just include what like I said. They can refresh on the topics that need to be, whichever ones that covered that we already have. Because, like you said, we really have covered them up to this point. I was trying to look up there and see.
Does it say anything on the ACM about? Because we were talking about quadratic functions in 3.2. Does it say anything about forms of quadratic functions? The vertex form versus the standard?
It doesn't on the ACGM. I mean, all it says is recognize and apply polynomial, radical, rational, exponential, and logarithmic functions and solve related equations.
Okay.
And then it says apply graphing techniques and evaluate all roots and higher degree polynomial rational functions.
Okay.
I mean,
that's suitably broad and vague.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Well, which is why we just need to kind of all get on the same page with something and
yes,
and just live with it and go on.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, do we think we actually need section 3.4?
Polynomial. Well, okay. When I do 3.4, I don't really do much in the way of applications.
No.
Because again, those applications tend to be of the form y equals, I'll give you x, you give me y, I give you y, you give me x. So they're not terrible. And that, what I really emphasize is the graphs and the models.
Okay. So do we want to say on section 3.4, graphs / models? And then, and we can leave the application, because we do teach applications in some of those other systems, as long as we teach applications somewhere, and we've already.
Tyson, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but whenever we met at the very beginning, we already discussed 3.4 and 3.5 that we would only do graphs, we cut out the application and models at our very first meeting. I'm looking at the paper here that was that we went over.
Right, that's great.
And so we had already.
So we need to say graphs only.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
If you want to do models, you can do models or whatever, obviously.
But I'm just looking at this paper that the very first meeting when we went through and decided, based on the ACGM, we had mentioned that we would just do graphs in these two sections if we did them.
Well, I mean, and that's what I was asking, because I was looking at the ACGM and I didn't see some of what was taught in some of those sections.
Right. So we could, on the other, we could just say, you know, like I said, if they want to do the models, they can.
Oh yeah, I remember that now that you've mentioned it.
Yes, I forgot about it, and I was thinking about it when we were talking about it, so I got the paper out and I noticed that we had scratched that out and said the graphs only on both these sections. And so, you know, if we do it, we could just, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, when we say graphs only, do we want that over in the box with 3.4 and 3.5? Because we don't
Yes.
remediation, because we're putting all remediations over on that other side.
Right. Yes.
So like graphs only there.
Yes.
I mean, in trying to stay clear for everybody.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then so, are we thinking we're okay with no remediation on those?
Let me look
Or
at
do
it.
we want to say refer to? And guys, I mean, I haven't taught 3.5. I mean, that's the section I haven't taught. So.
No, I mean, I've taught that a lot, and the thing that you do there is
I have not.
We have to go over what causes the rational function to be undefined. So basically, setting the denominator equal to 0 and solving that.
So maybe the remediation is a discussion of.
Well, I think it's something that actually came up earlier, because didn't we talk about previously the very same thing? What makes a rational expression undefined?
What makes right undefined?
And so we could revisit that. I mean, once again.
Yeah, I haven't taught 3.5. I'm trying to look at that and see. That is not one. I was looking at 3.6. Oh, we don't. Well, no. We don't include that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was in section 1.6, so we could say review 1.6 as needed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we'll have to remind them more than once on some of these things.
For sure.
Yes.
Underfined.
Okay. So are we ready to go to chapter 4?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so chapter 4.
Okay, let me see.
Okay, so their remediation on the inverse thing is simplify complex fractions. That's probably something we would need to review again, don't you think?
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
The way it's stated here, they're basically saying review, keep, change, flip. I might throw this out here if people want to hear this, and you guys can decide, you know, whether you like it or not. But I like to simplify complex fractions by recycling the idea of clearing fractions. If you take a fraction over a fraction and you find the LCD of all the parts there and multiply on the top and bottom by that, you get rid of the complex fraction and go.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how I always teach. And I mean, I teach clearing fractions all the way up at the very beginning. Even in 1-1, I teach clearing fractions.
Yes.
So.
Did we put a note in 1-1 that we wanted to make sure that was covered?
Well, I mean,
we want to add in.
Well, I mean, well, Jason's talking this more in depth, but I mean, I clear fractions anytime I can.
Me too.
Fair enough. Well, so the way that Tyson, I understand it, he's saying, let's do this in 1.1. We have it again when we get to solving rational equations in 1.6.
Yeah, we do.
And so we could be recycling that idea again in 4.1.
Right.
And that there's just thematic.
Right.
So.
Well, and that's what we want to do, is so that someone would know what they need to know before they would teach that section. So
Right.
tell them they, you know, that they just need to revisit the review topics from wherever, then
revisit clearing fractions
and what else did you say, Jason?
simplify.
Simplify complex fractions by, and I put this in quotations, clearing fractions, because you have to remember that you're going to multiply by something over itself.
Right. And so we can take out that first statement and just leave it with the other.
Right.
But you can, I was suggesting that we include this along with what they already offered.
Okay.
Which, I think of what they offered is just keep, change, flip, but.
Is it by writing a division problem? Is that what it says?
Well, I mean, you could say
yes,
by clearing fractions, comma, and then you could just have said, or by writing it as a division
You're writing it as.
instead of writing that whole first part again. Okay. I think that's okay. I mean, we can still tweak the wording later. I mean, you know, nothing's in stone. Okay, so 4.2.
There was nothing, I was going to say, there was nothing in developmental, I don't think, besides just the introduction of the visual graph.
the property of
What about properties of exponents would probably be, yeah.
I would want to.
And that was back in, I think so too.
Yeah, by the time we come to this, they will have forgotten the properties of exponents again.
Yes.
So properties of exponents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exponents.
Yep. Anything else we can think of?
Well, I mean, as long as people are remembering to include, you know, net powers and the zero power, I think that's probably sufficient.
Maybe say zero power.
Zero power property?
Yeah.
Just zero power?
Yeah.
Zero power, and it said something else.
I said negative exponents as well.
Yes.
Yeah, negative exponents. Okay. I'll agree with that. Okay. 4.3.
Well, okay, so 4.3, I mean, the magic phrase of logarithms is that logarithms are exponents.
Yeah.
And we're defining a new thing here. So I don't know that we have any more remediation here than we had in the section before. Unless someone else has a different idea, which is, you know, perfectly okay.
Uh, 4.4 is evaluating logarithms and the change of the base theorem.
Yeah. their remediation for 4.5, we could really move that up to 4.4.
Yeah.
Round decimals in any given place. Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess.
Do you not want to do that?
No,
Okay?
I'm fine with doing it. I mean, the only thing I'm worried about, but because when we do, I mean, because at some point they're going to need basic calculator skills to,
Yeah.
to do some of the logarithm stuff. So at some point,
Yeah.
it'd be in our remediation,
Right.
and we haven't mentioned the calculator at all.
Yeah, well, okay, so I think it's weird now because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the software on the calculators, some of them will allow you to enter a base. Like you could say log base 3 of 10, and that would be okay. But the older ones don't, so I'm ready to get rid of that. But it's worth mentioning. I mean, I bring it up when I cover this stuff in class because the technology they have, and so some of them have a nice calculator, good for them. If they don't,
I'm going to be doing it because I have the Promethean board now where I can actually do all that and put all that up, and they can write on the calculator, and I can show them everything.
Do we want to make a calculator recommendation
for the students?
What do y'all all put in your syllabi that they can?
Scientific calculator.
Scientific, yeah.
I mean, they have to have a scientific calculator, but at some point we need to probably work on calculator skills.
If you put a recommendation in there, like Jason was saying, then you may not have as much discrepancy between the programming. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you want to work on set skills, on calculator skills, then you're not having to go, okay, what kind of program do you have? You can just say, hey, this is what I would prefer.
Right.
Oh, well,
this is the calculator programming, and I'm going to show you because this is the calculator that I'm using. So I prefer that you have this type of calculator. So everybody puts that type of calculator in their syllabus, and then if they don't, then
well, like in stats, I mean, we all use an 83 or an 84.
Right.
And so when we do our demos, that's what we do. I mean, we do the demos, and that's what we display. It might be nice if we all had a similar calculator, or at least make them. And I tell them they can use any calculator they want in stats. It's just I may not be able to help them if they're not using one I'm familiar with.
That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. It would make it easier on you as an instructor to be able to assist them with their calculator if they had the same calculator that you as an instructor are utilizing to show.
Well, I would only be willing to go so far as to suggest that we come up with a recommendation for a calculator. Say, we recommend you bring, because we know that it's good and robust, but beyond that, you know, from my perspective, pretty much any calculator, if I've looked at it long enough, I've got it. And so, you know, I'm just pointing out a trend here that the technology is making the change of base formula go away. Yeah. We're not there yet. But.
Okay, guys, I gotta go. I'll get with y'all tomorrow.
Okay.
And talk, but Kristen's grandmother's unresponsive, so we gotta go.
Okay.
See y'all later.
Drive safe.
Jennifer, what did he? I didn't catch the last part. How was her grandmother?
Unresponsive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So he's gonna go.
Yes.
What do we, just to finish up here, so if we cover 4.5 remediation before 4.4, is there anything that you guys think that we need to do for 4.5, or are you going to be able to do that pretty seamlessly?
Have anything at this time?
Myself either.
Okay. And then also, I'm going to save this.
I think this is a good start.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen, for putting that together. Also, I'm going to, and I'll try to email that out to everybody so you guys all have an update.
All right. Well, we appreciate your skills.
My great diving skills. And then I was just looking at his, and I think, Karen, if you'll just get with him later, let's talk about how y'all want to present. I'm not going to be there on Friday, so I trust you guys to speak for me and let me know how it goes.
Okay.
And I'm going to also forward this to Lisa.
All right, that'd be good.
So she'll have a copy of it for our meeting minutes.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Hey, thank you. Y'all have a good afternoon.
Y'all
You as
too.
well.
All right.